don't do it for the money. I did it for the cause. I mean, in Marina blue, Sunfire yellow, Marlboro red.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to From the Frame Up, the podcast that weaves through traffic to give you the most important topics in the automotive industry. I am your host, Jared Jones, and this is episode 3. Thank you very much for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about a really important subject in the automotive industry, the idea of obtaining and retaining high-quality talent. We know that this is an issue for a lot of collision repairs specifically, and so we're going to get some subject matter expertise from my friend, lead recruiter at Insight Global, Dahlin Brooks. But before we do that, we got to do a little bit of housekeeping. So, From the Frame Up is the property of CSN Collision Centers. I am the marketing and communication specialist at CSN Collision Centers. CSN Collision Centers is a network of more than 200 collision, auto body, paint, and glass repair facilities located across Canada. Using high-quality repairs and outstanding customer service, CSN Collision Centers safely repair more than 200,000 vehicles per year, giving Canadians the trust and confidence that their vehicle has been repaired to like-new condition the first time. Visit csncollision.com for more details. CSN Collision Centers, we'll straighten it out. Okay, so now that all that corporate stuff is out of the way, we can get into the episode. Without further ado, check out episode 3, Obtaining and Retaining Talent. Joining me today, lead recruiter for Insight Global, my friend Dahlin Brooks. Dahlin, say what's up to the people.
Hey guys, nice to be here, Jared. We were talking about this before, and I am just really excited. Got a chance to look at your first episode with Shelby, and you're a natural, man. You did awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, I try. I learned from a lot of people that I listen to in terms of like I'm a podcaster, right? So like now I'm officially I'm in the trade. I'm a podcaster, but I listen to them all the time. I used to have a really serious commute to work, and podcasts is like how I got to and fro. So I appreciate the kind words. Don't butter me up too much, because I am going to try and ask you some tough questions. So before we start with the grilling, I just wanted to give the people a quick overview of what you do and who you do it for. So Dahlin is the lead recruiter for Insight Global. Insight Global is the third largest IT staffing firm in North America, specializing in single sourcing and managed services within IT, government, accounting, finance, and engineering professionals, all while delivering service-based solutions to Fortune 1000 clients. Not only that, but Insight Global has a strong focus on building a successful culture within their offices and their staff, all while growing people personally, professionally, and most importantly, financially. So that's Insight Global. What do you do at Insight Global?
Yeah, that's a great intro. In a nutshell, third largest staffing agency. What I do personally, I've got a unique opportunity right now to work within IGX, which essentially acts as all startups in different cities that we have. So I manage a local team, internal operations for sourcing and recruitment. I also help manage multiple offices across the state. So Milwaukee, Omaha, OKC, Salt Lake City, and Vegas from a recruiting fundamental perspective.
That's cool. I like the Vegas part. I think you and I maybe have a road trip ahead of us, and maybe not too far in the distant future. Maybe once we're both vaccinated. We'll talk about offline if you're going to do Are you going to do the vaccine? Let's leave that, because we don't have any controversy.
One of the tough questions that you're going to put on me in front of everybody.
Well, I'll get your feedback on that later. But yeah, it's a thing, right? It's a topic.
I know.
So what we're going to talk about with Dahlin today is how to recruit and retain talent, right? So it's like it's one thing to actually get somebody to work for your organization, no matter how big or small you are. But it's more important to keep them, because you've done all this work of onboarding them, getting them on the team, getting them used to the culture. So what we want to kind of uncover in the automotive industry, one of the big challenges is how to recruit and retain talent properly. So what we'd like to do is identify some of the best practices, some of the tips and tricks of the trade, so to speak, from the lead recruiter at Insight Global in terms of how to do that. So specific to the collision industry, there's kind of two parts of the equation for us. There's like the corporate side, where I work. That's pretty self-explanatory. We've got finance, we've got operations, we've got marketing, we've got HR, all those departments in any standard, corporate organization. And in automotive, you've got automakers, right? So you've got the different automakers across the country. You've got vendors, whether it's 3M or Axon Nobel, and they're huge. They've got revenues in the B's, right? Not the M's in terms of, their annual pull. And then there's the other side of the equation where it's like you've got these local organizations, whether they're banner networks or whether they're franchise locations or whether they're just kind of independent repairs or facilities, whether it's a dealer or a collision center. And they're medium to small size businesses, and they've got to put a lot of horsepower into actually recruiting their talent adequately. So, they're technicians, they're painters, they're journeymen, they're not HRBPs. So we're going to get into a little bit of what they can do to act like these bigger organizations like an Insight Global, to kind of use some of your toolkit and apply it to what they do on a day-to-day basis to try to get more talented people within their organizations. Is that cool?
That's a great idea. I'm game.
Okay, so you're ready. It sounds good. It sounds like you're ready to go.
I'm ready.
Okay, so let's start out. I'll lob you a little softball to get started. What is Insight Global's typical client? Like, what industry are you guys focused on? Are you covering more than one segment, or are you kind of sticking to a specific niche in terms of who you're trying to work with?
Yeah, great question. We specialize in IT, so like information technology, accounting, financing, and engineering. And in government sector, we have all of those lines of businesses set up. But the cool part is based off of the different cities that you're around, your office kind of takes on its own identity as far as to what the economic value is for that city. So during the COVID-19 crisis, we were able to open up a division in healthcare staffing, and we've had the opportunity to be a light for so many that were responsible there. Vancouver, you tend to see a lot of gaming, and so we partner with Microsoft and those types of studios. So it's pretty city specific, but we specialize in IT.
Okay, that's really cool, and it's interesting that you were able to kind of branch out into a bit of a different segment for you guys, specifically just based off the pandemic, and that kind of dovetails into what I wanted to talk about next. Is how did the pandemic affect your industry? Not necessarily specifically Insight Global, but it seems like the idea of staffing and recruiting maybe took a bit of a downturn, just like the rest of the world, except for guys like Musk and Bezos and Zuckerberg. They seem to do okay. But it seems like everything else kind of slowed down in terms of people being laid off and that kind of thing. Is that something that you guys felt as well?
Definitely. I mean, the pandemic hurt mostly everybody, us included, right? Significant layoffs that you were experiencing across Canada and the States, across the world. You can imagine how it affected those willing to turn to outside hiring practices like ours. That being said, you mentioned how we were able to shift gears and focus our attention to industries that did need help and that we were able to be the light for. And then as far as internally, we had a lot of really great people working around the clock to be able to set us up with acceptable work from home environments. So there wasn't a lot of downtime in our productivity. We were able to move pretty agile or pretty quickly into a work from home phase.
Nice. I think that's one of the biggest challenges with corporate is that some people had a quick turnaround in terms of getting up to speed with the remote work, and other people, a year later, still kind of struggling with some of the stuff, especially when it comes to IT and that kind of thing. So how does the IT climate compare to that of automotive? Would you say that it's hyper competitive? Is there a high turnover rate? Like what do you guys see that maybe is similar to automotive from an IT perspective?
Yeah, good points. Everyone is from a hyper competitive standpoint. Everyone's seeking to install and develop the newest piece of tech. And so you tend to see, especially at a project manager level, individuals move from one competitor to the next, bringing different practices from previous roles. So we see that a lot, in the financial industry in Toronto. You see project managers move from CIBC to Scotia to BMO, and bring different practices that they have to their different locations. So like in the hyper competitive sense, yes, it is. High turnover, I would probably attribute that to contractors just wanting to develop their skills, honestly. With IT always evolving at an exponential rate, it's impossible for companies, especially at a larger scale, to continually keep up with the newest and shiniest tools that are being developed. And so you tend to see contractors move from contract to contract in order for them personally to enhance their skill set.
Right.
And and there's a ton of players within IT, right? Everybody needs IT, whether it's a mom and pop shop around the corner, that even need their new point of service terminals set up so they're able to like use debit cards and credit cards. That is supported back and through IT. And then obviously the Microsofts, the Teslas, the PayPals, they obviously have a big IT focus. Whether or not their services have been outsourced to a data center, but everybody, in some capacity is tied to IT in some case.
Gotcha. And I think that makes sense. There's obviously some striking similarities between what you just mentioned and obviously our space. Collision is a bit of an unsung or not as shiny as perhaps the other players within the automotive industry. We think of new vehicle sales, even used vehicle sales. Those kinds of things tend to get more attention. The marketing side obviously gets a lot of attention because Super Bowl rolls around. What's the latest car commercial, that kind of thing. But people don't understand that there's also the collision repair side of it. That has a lot to do with the customer life cycle. And so for us as collision repairs, I do think that there's a lot of that same thing. Everybody needs good technicians, right? So whether you know how to bang out a dent or whether you know how to program software or anything like that, good technicians are hard to come by. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you about some of this stuff. So I'm curious how the process works. So as an Insight Global lead recruiter, how does it work? Like you work with a client and the client tells you, I need this person by this date and here's the pay structure, go. Or is there more of a discussion about fine tuning some of that before you start presenting potential candidates to your client?
A little bit of both. I mean, we're service providers, right? And so we work within the constraints provided by the client. The cool thing about Insight Global is we saw the agility that we have to be able to just shift to a work from home basis with the pandemic that's going on. And so we are very malleable. We shift we focus our constraints based on the client, and by understanding their sense of urgency, right, we're able to work backwards from a potential start date to establish realistic interview times. We give them the idea of how long it takes to onboard somebody within their own company for a specific skill set that they're looking for. We conduct a conversation with a hiring manager to get a better understanding of not only the skill set they are looking for, but what is the type of team and culture that they're trying to build. And then from there, we can use our network and job boards to find their ideal candidate. So we take as much of the hiring process into our own hands as a customer is willing to allow us. So for example, first round interviews, customized screening tests, questionnaires, that kind of thing. We even have the opportunity to develop significant relationships with clients that we can take the whole hiring process off, and they actually allow us to conduct every step of the interview and then just have them on site for them because we've established such a foundational relationship with them.
That's awesome. I really like that approach, and I think that what you hit on is something that I want to talk about as well. To pull out a lot of the good stuff that you said there, what I honed in on was culture. And I feel like there's a large part of the current talent pool out there that's looking primarily at the culture of their organization as kind of the driving force for what's going to be the deciding factor about whether or not they want to stay or whether they want to go. So kind of having a conversation with your client about what your culture is so that you can get more insight into the type of candidate that you're looking for, I think is a really important point. And the other thing that you said there is having an idea of what it takes from a resource, time as a resource perspective to onboard somebody into your team. And I think that gets kind of overlooked sometimes as well. You're looking for somebody and you have to understand how much resource you put into actually getting them from the candidate phase to the actual employee phase. And then whether or not you need to balance that time as a resource against what it's going to take to get them to stay. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that a bit later on in the conversation. So a great answer there. I'm going to talk a bit now about expectation setting. How do you set expectations with your clients about what you think, the reasonable timing is? Like how do you balance like their need to hire somebody and your commitment to hiring the right somebody for them?
Well, great question. For us, it's all about finding them the right person. They're the ones that at the end of the day have to work alongside the individual for the duration of the contract or for the permanent opportunity that they're looking for. So we have the ability, given the 20 years we've been around and the incredible hard work with the recruiters in our office, to reach out within our network and hopefully fill a role within 24 to 48 hours. So that's how quickly our turnaround time can be. So it's important to understand how quickly they can move and how quickly they can operate. And some specialized skills will take a little bit longer, obviously, but we rely on constant and over communication with the hiring manager to maintain those realistic timelines. It doesn't make sense for us if we can move at a 24 to 48 hour turnaround time and they don't want to onboard somebody for the next 3 months. By the time we find that, their ideal candidate, they're going to be off the market. So it's important to establish what we're able to produce and then also have a realistic timeline from them.
I like that. Having a realistic timeline makes a ton of sense. Does that approach change at all? When you're working with a client, perhaps you've worked with them in the past and they've been, fairly understanding and you've got a good working relationship with them. But now they're in a bind, right? Like now they're in a situation where it's like, man, I need somebody now. Like I'm losing work because I don't have this role filled. And, I'm thinking about, specific to the automotive industry, I got a service bay open. I've got a sales manager role that's open. I need to be able to turn this around. I'm losing work because I don't have a person there. Get me a warm body. Does that change your approach at all, or is it, this is the script, we're sticking to it?
No, it definitely does. It sure can. So we have a couple options there. We offer a 1-week working interview for those extremely urgent needs for the common skill sets that we can have. So we'll discuss the situation with our candidates, right? It's important to over communicate to our candidates what they are also getting themselves into. It's their job, it's their livelihood as well. We iterate the same sense of urgency that our client is experiencing, which allows our candidates to work on site for a week with our client, essentially testing their skill set to see if they're compatible. And then our teams also work evenings and weekends if necessary to come through for our clients. So our most flexible option would be like the 1-week interview, I would say, and that allows us to put candidates on site. They can test them out. They throw the book at them. If they like them and they mesh well with the team and they're satisfactory, then we continue to roll out the contract as if it started from day one. And if it's not, then we're able to work on a backfill for them, and we don't charge them anything.
That's really cool. Yeah. That's an interesting model. I'm not sure if you just shared the secret sauce or not, or if that's standard across the industry, but it's out there now, buddy.
I don't think it's standard across the industry. I have a really cool opportunity. I love working for this company. We do a lot of things really, really well. That just happens to be one of them.
That's really interesting. I think there's going to be some people specific to my industry that find that idea equally tantalizing when it comes to trying to find a way to see if this is the right fit. Maybe it's call it a trial or call it an on-site evaluation, whatever you want to call it. I think that you might be onto something there. Probably a reason why you guys are a global organization. So that makes some sense.
It's not me. It's all up there. I can't take credit for that.
Sure. Good man. So I want to talk a little bit about markers for the ideal candidate. I think that I've sat in interviews. I think we've all, anybody that's listening to this has probably sat in an interview. Some of us have been on the other side. Some have been able to hire people. What traits or what markers are you looking for that kind of gives you a bit of a cheat into this answer is pretty much a telltale sign that this isn't going to work, or this answer is a really good indicator that this is the right candidate? Are there any shortcuts that you guys take? I don't want to say shortcut. Is there a cheat code?
No. We're so solution based on the company that there's nothing that you can really pinpoint that is going to give you the ideal candidate. We try our best to sit in on a lot of the interviews, just so that we can see, in my opinion, most communications 90% nonverbal. So I need to see how they interact. I need to see those types of things, which helps me develop a better sense of what they're looking for moving forward. So there's not a specific question that you can answer. You have some clients that want to hand out a 60 questionnaire, like a 60 question, set and answer test and have them fill that out. You have some clients that do more of a psychological examination as well. So there's not a magic sauce that you can kind of put to this. We're very client specific.
Okay, that's fair enough. I wanted to put you to the test there because if there was a magic wand or a secret sauce, or as you said, a magic sauce, I would like to know what it is. It could help make some of my industry contacts' lives a little bit easier.
There's so many different factors. Sorry to cut you off there again. There's so many different factors too, right? Like, I'm sure that you and I have also been involved in poor interviews. And does that mean that the candidate's a bad employee? No. There's a million different things that are going through their mind that day too. So there's a lot of variables that kind of come into play there.
Yeah, it's a really good point because I'll be honest. I've punted on a couple. Anyway,
I
I was,
have as well.
yeah, I was trying to bring that thing back for a score, but it just didn't quite work out. So I hear what you're saying. It's an important thing to consider that, you don't know what that person's going through. If they're leaving a job that's not, ideal or not great for them, maybe there's just some added pressure. If they're in a space where they feel pretty comfortable, but there's some trepidation about whether or not they want to take the next step forward, that can make them a little bit tentative. So it's an important thing to consider for sure. So we've kind of talked about how you do and what you do and how you do it. The next scenario I kind of want to paint is, if you're interviewing a candidate, you're the hiring manager. What's your make or break question? Like, what's the question that's in every interview that you would do?
Me,
Yeah.
every interview that I would do, I would ask you. Great question. I would say you and I have. I'm inviting you up to my cottage this weekend. Let's say a barn, a farm. I'm inviting you up to a farm, right? I'm going to ask you, if you were given the day, would you be able to fully paint my entire barn this weekend? Like, if I were to hire you, can you commit to painting it within 24 hours, like within the Saturday? So
Yeah, I
I
can
would
do that.
ask you and see how you answer from
Of
there.
course, I can do that. Yes.
Right. So
Yes, I
there's a
can do that.
different. So for me, there's different ways. You haven't asked, what are your tools, like the size of the paintbrush that you have. You don't know how big the barn is. We don't know the viscosity of the different paint. There's a lot of different questions that go into that answer. So for me, I like your confidence right away. So if that's something that I attribute is important for my team, and I want somebody that's just, yes, I will go do that no matter what it takes. I don't care. Give me another variable. It doesn't matter to me. Then I can do that. Then that's a great answer. I like
But
to see a little bit more depth, because
but
what
I'm
if you
not detail oriented. I didn't ask those important questions about how large is the barn? Do you have paint? What are the tools that I have? Am I using a super soaker filled with water-based paint to
do you
paint the
have
100-foot
one
barn?
paint can? How far away is the paint store? Do they have,
Right.
there's a lot that you can kind of put into that. That's probably my
So
favorite question.
so that's a really good question. I like that. So based on that, I assume then that you wouldn't hire me. You don't
Oh,
have to answer that. In fact, don't answer that, because I don't
no.
want to cut. I don't want to cut this episode short. So you answer that later on. But I love that. I love that kind of that style of question where it's like it's very straightforward. And yeah, we were both athletes. I'm extremely confident, perhaps too
Of course.
confident. And so it's like, yeah, of course I can paint a barn that's 100 feet by 100 feet with a watercolor based paint and no brush. Yeah, I can make that happen.
I can do
I
it.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so let's say the candidate that you were asking that question uh, didn't do what I did, and kind of overestimated their own abilities, and they nailed the question. So they check all the boxes, right? It's like, how do you get them to go from the candidate phase to getting them on your team without like giving away everything? You know what I mean? Like, we talked IT versus, automotive repair or just the automotive industry, generally speaking, hyper competitive. If it's hyper competitive, that means a really good candidate probably has more than one option. So how do you without giving away the farm, get them onto your team?
Good question. You mentioned us being athletes, and I think you can relate to this. You leave it all on the field. Like, we reveal everything. You're not, this isn't a trick to anybody. You're dealing with their livelihood as well. They have a lot of things to consider, if this is their single source of income, or if they have to provide for a family. So there's nothing that I would advise to kind of hold off and, like, surprise, you have this kind of perk. They need to be able to take these things into consideration to be able to make the best educated decision for them and potentially those that their lives are dependent on. So we reveal everything. I think it's extremely important for candidates to do the research on the company that they're choosing for the next role. So as far as an Insight Global is concerned, I like to discuss our weekly pay. Like, we pay our contractors every week, the benefits to our contractors, the same benefits that I receive. We have a contractor engagement program that we have that offers a rehire rate above 50%. So we rehire or redeploy program for our contractors that have already signed with Insight Global. So we'd like to turn that corner, and instead of you leaving it up to yourself to hunt for that next contract, we like to take care of your career for you. And we will put you at our top priority list, that if you've already worked with Insight Global, well, 6 weeks into the end of your contract, we're going to actively redeploy you across as many of our consultants networks as we can to hopefully land you another spot. And then, at the bottom level, I like to sell myself and my work ethic and everything that I'm willing to do to come through for you as your representative.
That's really interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there. That's really interesting. I hadn't considered that might be something that potential candidates or potential clients might see as a benefit, but obviously it is. It's a huge value add when it comes to saying I'm going to use this particular service, or I'm going to use this particular recruiter. Being placed more than once it's a good feeling to have, to understand that they're going to at least have your back. And I do love the analogy of leaving it all in the field, because I think that there's a lot of hesitation when it comes to the way that we approach things specific to our industry, in terms of trying to keep some stuff secretive, right? Where it's like we don't necessarily want to tell a potential candidate everything that we do and how we do it, because at the end of the day, our competition is our competition. And so if I've got a really good technician, or a really good general manager, or a really good accounting person, whatever the role is, there's obviously going to be competition for that person. And so I don't necessarily want to tell them everything about what we do on a day-to-day basis, give away our secret sauce, so to speak, and then have them not come to us. And now our competitor has that information because they've gone over there. But I like the approach of just saying we're just going to leave it all in the field, because ultimately that's how we're going to get them to come here. And I think that that's a really important aspect of any organization, whether you're a medium-sized business, small business, or a corporate organization, to be able to say we believe so much in what we do and what our culture is that we can leave it all in the field. And we know that that's ultimately what's going to land the client. So really good point by you. You kind of touched on that idea of telling them everything. What's the thing that's driving? What's making the most impact for today's client or today's candidate when it comes to those, whether it's work perks, or is it just the bottom line? Is it just about money, or is culture? Is it education, continuing education? Social committees, what's the driving factor behind, I chose them for most of your candidates or most of your clients?
Honestly, probably for most, I would say within IT, it tends to be unique projects as a needle mover. So I mentioned this before, with technology is constantly adapting and evolving. You typically like to see individuals wanting to work within the latest and greatest trends. So some people also have a passion for a specific industry or client that they would only be willing to leave their current role for. And our job is just to understand them from a candidate perspective and bring them the best opportunities that they desire. So within IT, I would say the opportunity to work with the latest and greatest pieces of technology.
And is that something, so that working with the latest tech, obviously that's IT, but I do think there's a huge value add for collision repairs, because I think that's at the forefront for us as well. So whether it's automotive repair, you're talking about 3D augmented goggles and stuff like that, software updates and calibration, all those kinds of things are really cool in kind of industry specific things that happen within automotive that not a lot of people know about. So I like the idea of unique or kind of modern technology type projects as being a huge value add for people that are looking for work in that sector. Is that something that also kind of keeps the modern employee kind of satiated or satisfied, or is it something that they're looking for in addition to that? Like, are they looking for standard regular pay bumps? I think everybody is. But like, is there any, like, can I bring my dog to work? Like, what other needle movers? I'm going to steal that term from you, by the way. What other needle movers are there out there?
I would say client specific. You see, in the landscape that we have right now, you see a noticeable difference when I'm trying to recruit for, let's say, a small time gaming firm versus Microsoft. If I put that name out there, that tends to draw people's attention. Or if you put Apple or PayPal, so the larger companies that people are interested in tend to be eye grabbing. That being said, you can also turn off a lot of people, because if they don't want to be just another wheel in a cog, quote unquote, then they want to look for a little bit smaller of an opportunity where they can be a decision maker. They can wear many hats. They can enhance their skills. So it's very, very candidate specific. And then obviously you have the bottom dollar jump that most people are going to only leave their permanent role if it can afford to pay them equal or greater.
Yeah, for sure. That makes total sense. That's, at the end of the day, it's the ultimate needle mover, right? It's the capitalism, #capitalism.
I've coined that term, so I don't think you can use it anymore. Needle mover.
Yeah, but you said it on From the Frame Up. So now
Oh,
because you've lent your intellectual property to us,
right.
so now we can use it. I'll give you credit
All
for
the
it.
papers were. That's what I was signing all the papers for.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. So I think kind of the last one. Um, Give me your best advice. I know you're working with large clients, right? Like you name dropped Microsoft right there, right? So I mean, we get it. You're a lead recruiter for a reason, but collision repair, automotive repair, we're small to medium sized businesses. We're very, very good. We're strong. We've got good technical skills. We've got a ton of really educated and enthusiastic people. What would you say to an owner that's looking to effectively recruit and retain talent, regardless of the industry? What would your advice to them be?
Invest in the person. Hire someone who shares similar values that you do. The whole is greater than the sum of their parts, and I wholeheartedly believe that. So if you are hiring people that share similar values and you invest in them, as a person, then their outcome is going to be more than what you hired them for.
I like it. That's good advice. Invest in your people. Um, thank you very much for answering some of those tough questions. I took it easy on you a little bit, so maybe we'll do a part two a little bit farther down the road, and I'll really put you to the test. But I can't let you go without playing Fast Five. This is the Fast Five segment.
What are you smiling about?
Dude, I almost had you.
You almost had me? You never had me. You never had your car.
Okay, Fast Five.
What is it? What's Fast Five?
So you came on an automotive podcast. Now, obviously, there's podcasts have these different things that they do to differentiate themselves. On this one, we love the Fast and the Furious movie franchise. We're big fans. I am obviously a member of the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson fan club. I feel like those reasons are obvious. So the reason why we call it Fast Five is Fast Five is the first movie in the 9-movie franchise to have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in it. So it was his inaugural appearance in the franchise. It's also the last movie in the franchise to have a somewhat realistic plot, even though that they drive supercharged Dodge Chargers around the streets of Brazil, towing an empty bank vault of all things. So it's a bit of a stretch, but still, it's somewhat realistic before they jump the shark, and then it just gets crazy. But most importantly, it's hands down the most entertaining Fast and Furious movie in the entire franchise. So I just love it. And since I'm the host on this podcast, I get to call this segment what I want. It's called Fast Five. So it's 5 automotive related questions. You have to answer them as fast as you can. Are you ready?
Okay. I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. On your mark, get set, go. What was the first car you learned to drive in?
Automatic, it would have been a big gold Ford Windstar, and then manual was Mike Daly's Mitsubishi Lancer.
I love the name drop. Favorite food to eat in the car?
McDonald's breakfast.
Your favorite car from a TV show or movie?
Michael Keaton's Batman. Can I do Batmobile from Michael Keaton? Or I would say the Shelby GT Mustang 500 from Gone in 60 Seconds.
Favorite song to listen to on a road trip?
Oh, I wish this was better, but on my whole drive out here, I only listened to 4 albums, and it's Bon Iver, so anything Bon Iver. I know, don't.
The nickname of the car you're driving right now?
The Dart.
Dart. All right, time. I think that it's not great. We're not going to say the time out loud. We'll just say that you're not in first.
There's been 3. There's been 3, right? Am I middle of the pack at least?
No. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Thank you very much for playing. You were a good sport, and it's about leaving it on the field, or in this case, leaving it on the track. And you did just that. You played, you raced. You live to race another race again. So it's all good.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Jay.
Yeah, no problem. So we're coming up on the checkered flag here, but before we call it a day, is there anything else that you want to say? Any shout outs that you want to make real quick to your Insight Global teammates, or a special someone out there, your dog, anybody?
Shout out to the Vancouver office. Obviously, like nothing without you guys. Toronto, where I came from. I mean, had a lot of good memories there. IGX, I'm help manage them right now, so they're a great group of guys and women as well. You can find us at insightglobal.com. that is a one-stop shop for anybody that's interested in our Compass initiative. So to help build culture within your current climate, within a virtual climate as well. It's also a great spot for contractors who are looking for their next career move.
Nice.
InsightGlobal.com.
What's the company TikTok?
No TikTok.
No
our
TikTok.
Instagram. I think we have an Instagram. I think our Instagram is insight_global.
Okay. No, we'll make sure we'll plug it when we put the episode up. Dahlin Brooks, lead recruiter for Insight Global. Check him out, insightglobal.com. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on the pod. Go to fromtheframeup.ca to see Dahlin's time in our Fast Five segment. It's not pretty, but it'll be up there. And while you're there, subscribe to our content. We'd appreciate it. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on SoundCloud, all that good stuff. Fromtheframeup.ca. That's it. That's all.